Hi, hello, welcome. My name is Freya. I am a knitter and textile student living in Glasgow with my girlfriend Corrina and my two cats Saskia and Floki. Hi, welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome if you're new. You are very much welcome in this place. I hope it is a nice, calming, hopefully safe place for you to do your creative stuff whilst watching me talk about my creative stuff, which is just knitting. Basically, there's not really anything else apart from knitting. Yeah, so how have you been? I have been not the best, shall we say. I was alright, and then my mental health took a dive in quite a big way. So I didn't really knit for a couple of days. I wasn't interested. I didn't have the energy or focus or concentration to do anything. And I'd finished some of the things that I'll talk about. And then you have to think about casting something else on, and that was too much for me. So anyway, my mojo sort of came back yesterday slowly, and it's sort of come back today, and I had quite a lot to talk about. I had done quite a lot before then, and I have quite a lot to talk about, so I wanted to sit down, talk about everything, and just get on with knitting. So I've done a lot of Varpus, I've done some gift knitting, and I've done some socks. Not just any old socks, I will talk about that later. Again, I've got my notes. I've written down everything that I need to know. So hopefully I don't forget anything. So we'll just jump right on into the knitting, and we will start off with what I am wearing. This is my first finished object, and this is the Varpu. I started this in my last one, I do believe, and I probably finished it like a couple of days after I filmed that. It's such a fast, quick knit, so I'll show you what it looks like before I start talking about it. So this is it. So if anybody knows the pattern, also my last one, because I have actually made one in like a light beigey colour that I showed the last time. The Varpu is not a cardigan pattern, it's just a jumper pattern. It's like the perfect, basic, fast, fun jumper, like 100% beginner friendly, would recommend for any beginner to start off with. So I'd never knit a cardigan before, but I've always wanted to knit one. But what has put me off knitting a cardigan is that there's a lot of purling involved. If you knit a jumper in the round, it's just the knit stitch, and you can just keep going around and round and round. There's no purling apart from splitting for the front and back, but that's only a small amount compared to a cardigan, which isn't knit in the round, it's knit back and forth. So you have to do basically half the time you're purling. And purling isn't my favourite. It's alright. It's not like I will avoid anything to do with purling. I don't mind it, it's just slower for me, which can be frustrating, but I don't mind it. It's alright. So anyway, long story short, I modified this to be a cardigan. I could visualise, I've never followed a cardigan pattern, but I could visualise in my head how to change it and how to change the pattern so it was a cardigan. So that is what I did. Modifications that I did, obviously apart from splitting it right down the middle, again I added short rows at the back of the neck, which is what I always do to patterns. Even if they have short rows written into the patterns, I always add more. I don't know if it's just my neck that's higher at the back, but it just really annoys me, like if things are higher here, and then I'm always wriggling around. So it's just, I don't know, is it just me that has a higher back of the neck? I don't know. Anyway, I always add that in. So there's no short rows in this pattern, so I added 3 sets of short rows at the back. I also added 2 sets of short rows at the bottom of the back, just before the ribbing at the bottom, because I also do not like it. Like, if I was to knit a jumper without any short rows at the bottom, without fail, the jumper always rides up at the back. So then it creates like an angle, and it's always riding up at the back, which I hate. I hate that look, and it really gets to me. So I always add short rows at the bottom as well, often just to level it out. But recently I've done even more so that it is actually just lower at the back, because I like the cropped look, but I like it to have more coverage at the back. I also like the look of like high and low, so that's what I did. And in this instance, it did actually just end up being level, which is alright. I don't mind that. I was going for the high-low look, but it's fine. Also, I knit the smallest size for this one, and I also knit the smallest size for the last one that I did. However, now I don't understand how this has happened, but in the first one that I knitted, my gauge was so much bigger than the pattern stated, that I knitted the smallest size, and that turned out to have the dimensions of the second size of the pattern, which is the size that I wanted originally, so that was fine. And I liked that ease, and that is what I wanted for this cardigan. I did want it to be big, for it to be a layer that I can throw on top of anything else. However, for this one, my gauge, I didn't gauge swatch for this one because I gauge swatched for the last one, and I assumed that my gauge would be exactly the same, but it wasn't. This turned out to be bang on the pattern gauge, and for it to be bang on the dimensions of the first size, which I actually like, but it wasn't the look I was going for. I'll talk about yarn right now because I think that does play into it. So for this one, I held 2 yarns together, and I held the alpaca drops brushed alpaca in shade colour 8. I will link everything below, as well as timestamps I will link below. So if you're not interested in this, just skip to a part that you are. But anyway, yeah, I held this one together with Drops Melody. This one is a mix of 77% alpaca and 23% silk, and this one is a mix of 71% alpaca, 25% wool, and 4% polyamide. And they both have the same meterage, but this one's 25 grams and this one's 50 grams. So basically this is double the weight of this one. So I held these together, which gave me a bit of a thicker yarn than what the pattern called for, but that's what I wanted. I wanted this to be a warm layer. So the fabric turned out perfect. I love the fabric, and I would knit another one using these 2 yarns held together. But for the first one that I knitted, I just held 2 strands of this together. Now, why would that change my gauge? Like, I would have thought knitting something with a bulkier weight yarn would make the final product bigger, but it seemed to be the opposite. I can't really wrap my head around why that would be. So if anybody knows, let me know. But anyway, that is what I did for this one. So I just thought I'd mention that and I put it out there. So I knit, like I was saying, I knit the smallest size. However, for this depth from the shoulder to the bottom of the arm, I must have knitted the dimensions for like a good couple of sizes up, and I also picked up more stitches than the first size calls for, but then I decreased a lot. So it created a fitted sleeve, and in the pattern it tells you to not decrease at all, so it would create like a open, more bell sleeve, which isn't what I wanted for this. It is kind of what I did for the last one, but not for this one, which I like. I'm quite proud of the decreases that I did, because I feel like it's very even. I don't know how well you can see that, but it took a bit of maths and ripping back and trial and error, but we got there. So the way that I did it was I knitted front back panel, joined, worked back and forwards, added the sleeves. I then I then picked up and knit the neckband, and then after that I knitted the button bands. Yeah, I don't know if that's the normal way around that you do a cardigan pattern. Like I was saying, I've never knit or followed a cardigan pattern before, but that's what I did. So I ended up knitting the button bands, but now this was intentional. I didn't do buttonholes as I knitted. Like, I just knitted and I didn't do any yarn overs or whatever to create a buttonhole, because this, you can't see, but maybe you can see my fingers through that. This fabric is quite holey, and because the buttons weren't crazy big, I thought, instead of doing the maths and figuring out what stitches, like how many stitches between the buttonholes, I thought I'm gonna knit it and then do afterthought buttonholes. Now, is this a thing or have I made it up? I'm sure I haven't, because I must have gotten the idea from somewhere. I can't have been the first person to do it, but basically I laid out the buttons and then I figured out where I wanted to make the holes, and then I stretched out and wiggled a hole through, and then I stitched all the way around it. So I wonder, will you be able to see that? Yeah, kind of. So that's the buttonhole, and I just sort of stitched all the way around it just to keep those stitches stretched out. And that worked out perfectly. I would definitely do it again if I knit like an open fabric cardigan. It's just so much easier. Well, unless I was following a pattern, obviously, but I wasn't. It's just so much easier to just like knit it and then figure it out at the end. So the buttons that I used, I spoke about this in my last one. The buttons that I used, I'm sure they're from Drops, and they're like the pearlescent ones. So that should actually be what the front should look like, this sort of straight up whitey pearlescent colour. However, I was holding them up to the cardigan and I thought it kind of cheapened the cardigan and it wasn't really the best, but I loved the back of the buttons so much more, and it just worked out perfectly, and the back of the buttons are just so much nicer, and I actually think they go perfectly with the fabric. So I was really happy with that, happy that that worked out, even though I didn't like the front, I love the back. So that's what I did, and that just sort of wraps up what I want to say about this. I love it. I did want it to be bigger and for it to be a layer, however, it still works for what I want, and it's just so much easier to, like, instead of taking a whole jumper off, I can just undo the buttons and be like the perfect temperature. So I really want to knit another cardigan, but again, it's an investment. Knitting on smaller needles and purling so much and hoping that I won't get bored of it or frustrated with it and go through with it. But it has definitely made me want to do it. So that's this Varpu. Now, shall I talk about the next one now? No. Let's leave it till after this so that you don't get too bored of hearing about another one. It is different to this one, so hopefully you don't. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to my next whip. So, like I was saying, I think I said, my memory is so bad, so I don't even know what I said like 10 minutes ago, but yeah, so I finished this. I have a couple of like long-standing whips on my needles, but it wasn't really calling me. Like I was saying, my concentration has just been shot, like it's so bad that I needed something to keep me interested and to sort of hold my attention and for me to sort of get lost in it. So it started off with me just wanting to do some colour work. I have not wanted to do colour work really since I started seriously knitting about 1.5 years ago. I have knitted one Colourwork jumper, which was the Feel the Burn. I think that's what it's called, by Caitlin Hunter. I don't know, I'll put it down below what the pattern is anyway. But that's sort of the only colourwork thing that I've knitted in the longest time. And I just got this itch of wanting to do a colourwork project. So I just cast on in the round enough stitches to sort of make the right circumference for like a sock or an arm warmer. Now this had no project in mind. I literally just wanted to knit colourwork, and that's it. Which I've never really done, just knitting for the sake of wanting to do a technique. Like, I think it's because I've never knitted colourwork in such a small circumference. I don't know, I just felt like I needed to have that skill. Anyway, so first of all, do not judge the colours of this. These are the only colours that I had to hand. So they don't go together. I do not like them. You have been warned. So let me hide the rest of the sock. So I started off by just casting on and knitting. It's a 10 stitch repeat, so I cast on 70 stitches and repeated. You can see it better here. And repeated that pattern. Now I started knitting these on DPNs, 2.5 size needle on DPNs, and let me try and find the beginning. I don't know how well this will come up. No, you can't really see it, but it's like really textured and the stitches are all different sizes and it's not really nice. So I thought, I've got a set, is that what you call it? I've got a 9-inch circular sock needle on 2.5 again. So I thought, right, let's try and knit colourwork on a small circumference in the round on a 9-inch circular. Again, I just wanted the skill. I just wanted to practice the skill and for it to look good enough for me to go on and knit something that I actually wanted to wear. So this was just practicing. So when I joined and I started knitting on the 9-inch, like the tension and the stitches just completely changed to be like perfect. I don't know how well you can tell on camera, but these are all like kind of weird. It looks alright now that I've washed it, but it was kind of weird. But then when I changed to the 9-inch, like it's just, I didn't like straight away it was like perfect. I wasn't really thinking too hard about how I was tensioning the floats or anything like that. It just sort of naturally happened, which was crazy. So one of the reasons why I wanted this skill is because whenever I did colour work before, I knit English style, so like I fl- I flick with my right hand, so I'm working the yarn with my right hand. But I wanted to learn how to knit colour work using continental and English style. So before I would be dropping the yarn on this, picking the next one up for every single different stitch. But for this one, I held the contrast colour in my left hand, the main colour in my right. I flicked the main colour with my right and I picked the contrast colour from my left hand. Is this making sense? The more that I say this, I'm like, am I confusing people more? Anyway, so that is a skill that I wanted, and it did take knitting to like a pair of socks to really sort of get into the rhythm of it, and even by the end of that, it did still feel like alien to me, but I sort of bit the bug. So my intention was just to knit this, and you know, do nothing with it and then cast something else on, but I just kept knitting because I couldn't be asked, basically casting on something new. So I ended up knitting a sock. Unintentionally knitting a sock, and this was all about firsts, this sock. If you have watched me before, I have never knitted a sock that hasn't used the heel flap and gusset for the heel. Never. I've never ever tried any other heel, and I've never done a colourwork sock. So I'll start with the colourwork. I made all of these up. I charted it all myself. I didn't copy a pattern or anything like that. I just made it up basically. And I wanted to try an afterthought heel. I have never done this before. I have always wanted to do it, but the reason why I haven't done it is because my foot is very wide. Like, what's that called? The instep, is that what it's called? This very high. So for the heel flap and gusset, I will always do a long flap so that I can pick up more stitches, and therefore the circumference for that part will be bigger. So it fits me perfectly. I have got my recipe to perfectly fit my foot. So the thought of straying away from that and trying to wrap my head around something completely different and trying to fit my foot perfectly, ugh. But I needed something to hold my attention. I needed something new, so I did it. Now this whole sock is 70 stitches because with colourwork it always ends up being tighter. So the 70 stitches fits my foot perfectly. If I was to knit these again, which I'll talk about later, I would stay with the 70 stitch. So I did a 35 stitch heel. I didn't do a true afterthought heel. I put in some waste yarn and then picked it up. So I started with 72 stitches altogether for the circumference because I picked up one on the corner to prevent a hole. So I started off with 72 stitches, and then I just knit like I would knit a toe, but I decreased every other row all the way till the end. And this fits me perfectly. However, this is my issue, is that I started off with 72 stitches here, and I did a couple of rows where it was just knitting without decreasing. If I was to knit this on a 34 or even a 64 or a 60 stitch sock, and I used half, basically I would end up having 64-ish stitches on my needle here. The heel would turn out smaller, and any smaller than this would be too small for my foot. So I don't think I could ever do an afterthought heel that wasn't on a 70 stitch Colourwork sock. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Yeah, I would only ever do it if I started off with 72 stitches, which you just can't do on a normal 64 stitch sock. Anyway, I managed to do it, and I knit to like here, and then I decided to do the afterthought heel then before I finished the sock. So then I tried on the sock periodically until I got to a length that I thought I could start the toe. And then I knit the toe, and then I tried it on, and the toe, it ended up being a bit too short by like maybe 2 or 3, 4 maybe rows. And again, I was like, is it worth ripping back? And I was like, I've spent so long teaching myself new techniques. I'm gonna rip back and do a longer toe. So that's what I did. I did a longer toe. I'm really happy that I did. And through trial and error, I ended up making a sock that fit me perfectly. Although I don't really like the colours, I had to go through with it and knit the next one. So I knit the next one. For this one, I knit the top pattern in the same colours, which I actually really like the look of, having like a different, and obviously I switched around the contrast and the main colour for this one. I actually really like the look of that. Like I really like the Colourwork patterns that I chose. I think they work really nicely. Yeah, I really like the chart that I made for this. So I'm actually really excited about this. This is not new. I've knitted many socks before, none in Colourwork and none in Afterthought heels. So it was all very exciting for me, and I'm very proud of myself that I went through with it and finished a pair of socks that are super comfy, by the way, and super warm because there's like an extra layer of the floats, obviously. So this is just perfect for the winter, like perfect. So yeah, very excited about those. I've worn them once and they're really comfy and cushiony. So that's that. So next, what is next? So, okay. Next is a Varpu. I won't talk about this one a lot, don't worry. If you don't want to hear anything about it, skip to the next section. I have timestamps for my videos. But this one wasn't one for me, it was one for my girlfriend Corrina. If anybody is unaware, Drops is having a sale at the moment, and the Drops brushed alpaca silk is on sale. And my girlfriend was like hinting when I was knitting these, like my first one and this one, that she really wanted one. So I was like, great, pick out the colours, pick out the colour and I'll knit one. So she did. I'll show you the colour. She actually chose just one colour to hold double instead of what I'd done in these two where I chose 2 different colours to hold together. So she, again, Drops brushed alpaca silk, and she chose, I think this is green or forest green, the colourway, colour 11. And I risked it. I didn't do a gauge swatch. I was relying on the fact that the gauge for this was so much smaller because I was using a thicker weight yarn. So I sort of risked it, and I ended up knitting the second size for that one. Now, I don't know, maybe it's because my mood was changing just so much throughout these 3 Varpus, but this one ended up, like, the gauge for this one was the biggest gauge. So I knitted the second size, knowing that it would, or hoping that it would turn out bigger. And I'm sure the second size comes out at a 44 inch. Now in my head, with the gauge that I have, I thought that'll come out at a 52 inch, guessing, and it actually turned out to be a 54 inch, which was actually perfect. So I'm super happy I chose the second size. Yeah, like I was saying, the sizing of that was perfect. Now for that, so I've not actually got that one with me because she is out just now and she's actually wearing it. I'll put some pictures here. It's really hard to get good pictures. I don't know if she'll be happy with me taking pictures of her wearing it, so just assume that it looks like my one that I finished in my last one. Not a cardigan, just straight up the Varpu. Modifications that I did the short rows at the back, I did the short rows at the bottom of the back before the ribbing. I made this bit deeper, picked up more stitches. I did actually decrease a couple for hers because I picked up so much more. I didn't want it to literally be like gaping at the end. It wasn't like a fitted sleeve, but it was more fitted than what the pattern would have wanted it to be. And that was it. Like, I'm super comfortable changing this pattern. I think I'm quite comfortable modifying most patterns when it comes to changing the stitch count or the length of something. That doesn't bother me. I can do that quite easily. So that's what I did. For that one, I bought 10 balls thinking it would take 10 balls. It ended up taking like 7.5 balls. It ended up taking 200 grams instead of like the 300. I don't know, I can't do the maths. But anyway, it ended up taking a lot less. So I've got a lot left over of that yarn. I've got like 2.5 balls left of that. So I don't know what to do with that, but I have a lot left over of a couple of these colours all in the same yarn that I am thinking of making a scrappy Varpu with, which I'm sure you're going to be so bored of seeing. I won't make that for a couple of months. I'll save that for a rainy day. So that's all I want to say about that one. You've heard me talk about the Varpu far too much now, and I apologise. So we'll move on. We will move on to a gift knit. I'm gonna say it's a gift. Well, it is a gift, but it was also asked of me to make. I say asked. I told her that I wanted to make it, and she told me what she wanted the yarn to be, basically. So I have wanted to knit. This hat has been in my favourites on Ravelry for a long time, but I am not a hat wearer, which is a shame because for some reason at the moment I've been like itching to make hats. I've no idea why. I've never really had the itch before to make hats, but anyway, here we are. It's for my little sister. She did ask for it and she did choose the yarn, but Saskia, if you don't want to see what it looks like before I send it to you, look away or skip to the next section. So this is the final hat. I'm not sure how the colours are coming out on that. I'll show you the yarn. Oh, this is the Dreaming Slow hat. I don't know if I said that, by Ching Fibre, but I am sure that Kat from Heather and Hops designed it for them. So I'm sure it's her pattern just under their name. So I'll show you the yarn first. She chose this colour, which is a lavender colour, and she also chose to hold it together with this colour, which is Sea Mist by Drops, which is like a self-striping kind of yarn, and together the lavender with the sea mist, she liked the idea of that sort of being a nice scent. So we were kind of like, it has to be these two. So I held these two together. You actually hold 2 mohair strands with one of this, and I wasn't actually sure how it would turn out because obviously this is striped, and I didn't actually want the final hat to be striped. So I actually wound off some yarn so that I was pulling a dark colour out from this one and a light colour out from this one, so it would, in theory, in my head, balance each other out and actually just, how do I say this, and actually give the effect of me holding a lighter yarn and a darker yarn together with the lavender. Does that make sense? It makes sense for me. Oh yeah, I said what the colours was in the yarn. This is from West Yorkshire Spinners, and it's the Bo Peep Luxury Baby and DK, 52% Falkland wool and 48% nylon. I have used this yarn in a 4-ply before to do a test knit jumper t-shirt top, and it's so soft. I knew it was good quality and good yarn, so I knew this would be a good yarn to knit with, and it is. It's really good. I definitely recommend it. It's super wash. Although she can't wash it in the washing machine because of the mohair, it should be a lot easier to care for. So that's what I made it out of, and this is the final hat. I knit right. I have a lot to say about the cast on for this. I'm sorry if the light is going. I'm using the sun as lighting, and I think it's setting behind the house opposite. Hopefully it's alright. So the cast on for this is a different cast on that I've never done before. What is it called? I'm sure it's the double cast on. I don't know. It's basically the long tail cast on, but a little bit different. If you can do the long tail, you can do this, no problem. It wasn't hard. I actually really like this cast on. And it makes a different, more pronounced edge than the normal long tail would give, which I really like. I like that look a lot. So, but I must have cast this on about 8 times, and I wish I was joking when I say that. And Corrina will testify for me when I say I cast this on like 8 times. Normally I am really good with numbers in terms of keeping the stitch count right and casting on the right amount of stitches and counting properly. And actually when I cast on a lot of stitches, I will cast on 20 and put a stitch marker, cast on 20, put a stitch marker, so that I can count it in like bite-sized bits. And I did the same for this, like I did 20, put a stitch marker, 20, put a stitch marker. Then I knit, it's a 5 by 3 rib. So I knit 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, 3. And I'd get to the end and it would be wrong. I would then think back and really focus on doing 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5. And I'd get to the end and it'd be wrong. Then I'd rip it all out again, start again, I'd do the same thing. I'd get to the end, it would be wrong. So I was like, right. I paused everything. I told Corrina not to even look at me or talk to me, and I counted out loud every single stitch. I was like 1, 2, 3, 4 for the cast on. then for the ribbing I was like 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3, all the way around, and finally I got it, and I was like, oh my, like that was too much of a struggle for what it was. Anyway, after the cast on, I absolutely loved knitting this hat. It was so enjoyable. The only thing about this is that it's a DK and 2 mohairs held together, knit on a 3.75 needle. At the moment, I am so used to knitting like loose fabric, so I'm not properly like I'm not putting too much force in the knitting in terms of like it being tight on the needles. Does that make sense? Like with loose knitting, you're not forcing the needle into the stitches or anything like that. But for this, it was a little bit like that. But I absolutely love the fabric that it creates. So I'm super happy with that. I don't know if I said, but I knit the medium size. Now, it didn't actually have a gauge on the pattern, and I would actually have liked to have done a gauge swatch for this because I've never knit a hat before, but it didn't have one, so I just guessed. I actually cast on the size large first because she has a bigger head than me, but I knit a couple of rounds and I tried it on and I was like, no, this is crazy too big. So anyway, I did the medium, and I think that's going to be perfect. I wouldn't knit the large in this. And I knit till 7 3/4 of an inch, and then I decreased. If I was to knit this again, I would knit that a bit longer because I like, well, I don't know if Saskia likes it, but I like the look of a deeper rim. I think it ends up looking like this on that head, whereas I would prefer it to look a bit more like that. I don't know what she would like, but if I was to knit it for me or to knit it again, I would just do that. And that's all to say about that, really. Oh, I will mention, because I like mentioning this, that this used 32 grams of mohair and 63 grams of the DK weight yarn. I'm not sure what it says in the pattern. I think I actually used a lot more than what it said in the pattern, so if anyone's wanting to knit this, maybe keep that in mind. I do have all of that on my Ravelry project pages. If anyone's interested in knowing about any of that to do with any of my projects, it's all there. So that's what to say about that. I'm really, really pleased with that actually, and I will talk about that pattern more in just a bit. Well, let's talk about it just now, why not? Yeah, let's talk about it a bit more. So, this kind of cuts into acquisitions as well, because at the moment I've been thinking of a project, buying the yarn, casting on the project and using up the yarn. I've not been stashing it or anything like that. I've also not been using my stash yarn really. I've been buying more yarn to make the project, and that's that. So this is one project that I did that with, and it is another Dreaming Slow, and that's how much I've done. So it's nothing to show really, but I will show you the yarn that I am using. So I bought this, actually arrived this morning. So I've just done this morning. These are the yarns I'm using. So these are these. So the main colour is Drop Sleep. Oh my gosh. Drop Sleemer. This is a mix of wool and alpaca. 65 wool, 35 alpaca. A DK weight in colour dark grey, I think. So I got 2 of these to make it. I also got this colour, which is Drops Kid Silk in black. I'm sure it's just called black. But this colour was actually from my stash. If you've seen my projects, this is from the Earth and Air by James N. Watts. This was left over, which is quite a lot. Like, I needed to use this in like I couldn't use this in a scrappy project. That's just too much. I'm sure there was like 19 grams of this, which is perfect for this. This is Mayflower Super Kid Silk in colour 3. It does have a name, but it doesn't say on here. So that those are the 3 that I am holding together for this. Now I vowed to myself that I would never knit with black. Dark colours are so hard to knit with, and it becomes more of a chore. But because I'm holding it together with the greys, it's fine. And I have wanted to knit a dark black, dark grey hat for the longest time. I don't know why. It's just, I don't even, well, I wish I could pull off a hat, but I just wanted to knit it. So I'm knitting it. I am knitting it. For who I do not know, maybe Corrina would like it. Maybe I will like it and I will keep it and force myself into being a hat person. We shall see. Again, I cast on the medium on 3.75. Oh, for this one though, for the cast on, so here's the cast on, the double edge cast on, whatever it's called, and that is what the right side of the fabric looks like. However, because you fold it, you don't see it. Like, do you know what I mean? You don't see it. So for this one, I actually flipped. Instead of joining and going in the round, I actually turned it round and started knitting, so that when you fold it up, you can see that edge, which is what I wanted to see on that, but it didn't. I didn't really know that when I started knitting it, but really excited to have that on the edge of this one. So I will do basically exactly the same for this hat, but I will knit it longer before I decrease, and that's the only difference that I will do for that hat. And I am so excited to knit that. It's such a beautiful fabric that you just want to stop like every round and feel it. It's one of those ones. And I knit that hat in 2 days. So I have the feeling I'll do the same for that one. No shame at all. So I won't say any more about that because I've talked about that other one. The next project is my honey clutch. Now, I finished that pattern, and after I finished that pattern, my mental health took a dive, and that's when I really was like, I can't knit. I can only sit and stare at a wall and be like, I was derealization and dissociation and intrusive thoughts and, you know, not having a fun time. So I didn't want to knit on anything. I also didn't want to cast on anything new. That was just too much. I ended up doing a couple of rounds on, I've not got it with me because it was just a couple of rounds, on my Countess Ablaze sock with the contrast fluorescent pink heel. I knitted like 4 rounds on that before I realised that my tension was so much different. Obviously, because my mood was so different, my tension was so much different that I was like, I'm gonna ruin it if I knit on this at the moment. So I put that down, I actually picked up a scrappy sock and knit a couple of rounds on that. I've not got it, it's literally just a scrappy sock. Oh no, I do actually have it. So so this is it. Uh 64 stitch scrappy sock. 2.5mm. I just knit a couple of like this much on it because I can knit on socks, like plain vanilla socks, without thinking at all. So that was kind of good to get back into some knitting. But then I actually was like, I actually need something that draws me in a bit more to stop me from, you know, really giving into these intrusive thoughts and all of that kind of stuff. So I actually decided to pick up a whip that I have not worked on in just under 2 months actually, which is my Honey Clutch, I think it's called, yeah, Honey Clutch by Petite Knits. I have knit this pattern once before in like a beigey colour. I found this pattern very problematic. I've tried to knit one of Petite Knits patterns before and found that one very problematic for me in terms of the gauge and the kind of fabric that you get and just how different my gauge is. And my gauge normally isn't forgetting the Varpu, because that's not normal either. My gauge normally isn't different to the pattern, not considerably, like this or the other Petite Knit one was. But the pattern calls for 2.5mm. In my first one, the pattern ended up being like 4cm smaller. Oh, it was just so much different. I ended up having to like pluck out teeth from the zip to make it shorter, and that killed my hands. So for this one, I went up a needle size. I picked up more stitches to try and compensate. I've not even showed it. So this is what it looks like. The colour's not really coming out right. I was up to like here, so I knit a good chunk yesterday on this. And this is a honeycomb brioche, the stitches. Now I love brioche, I love the fabric that it creates, it's so squishy, and the tactile feel of that, I think that really helped draw me in. So anyway, that's what it looks like. I'm sure I have like another 1.5 inches to go before I do the top bit. It does that, it takes quite a long time doing this pattern stitch count. So I'm not sure when I'll finish it. I don't really feel like knitting on it again for a while, to be honest. So the yarn that I'm using is this colour, which is another Drops Kid Silk in green apple. I'm probably making that up actually, maybe it's just light green or something like that, but that's what it is. Colour 18, whatever that is. I don't know. I'm holding it together with this colour, which I did actually think that was going to be lighter, but it's fine. So this colour, which is a King Cole, I can't get it apart. King Cole Merino Blend 4-ply, which is 100% superwash wool. Again, a 4-ply weight. Yeah, it's nice. Nothing really to say about it, it's just nice. It is actually really soft, next to skin soft, and it creates a really, really beautiful fabric with this. I've spoken about, maybe I'll link the podcast below that I spoke about this, because I had quite a lot to say about it in terms of just how different mine turned out. Yeah, it's just so much, like, I've had to change quite a lot from the pattern, and it's still not the same, like, dimensions. I just gave in to the fact that it wasn't going to be the same dimensions. So that's that. Nothing really much else to say about that apart from what I said the last time. And that's that. Now that is all of my knitting. Yeah. I'm looking around because that's literally like all over the floor, all over the table. That's all of my knitting. And we'll go on to, I was gonna say whips, acquisitions, because there's quite a few. Yeah, there's quite a few. So Dropsell's having a sale. That's one reason why. Another reason why is because I needed yarn for projects that I really wanted to make that would keep my attention and that would keep me happy. so that's why. We will start off with this. So with this purchase, I got the yarn for my sister's hat. So I also just bought these things because this is also a project that I wanted to do. I got another one of these. I got 3 of these before in the sale. It's still on sale. I got another one because I only got 3 before, and for the project that I want to make I need 4 balls. I don't know why I didn't buy 4 before. Anyway, so I bought another one. It was still on sale. The same colour batch, the same dye batch. Is that what it's called? Dye lot. The same dye lot. So I got that I won't talk about what project it is. You'll just have to look back and see what I wanted to do with it. And I also got some sock yarn. I know more sock yarn. However, I want to make another Colourwork sock, but so I want to basically knit the same one. I want to change the pattern a little bit, like the little patterns, just a little bit, and I want to knit it in these colours. I want this one to be the main colour, and I sort of want to what's the word, like, you know, sort of put it in, how do I describe that, like knit the pattern. So one bit of the pattern's dark, then I'll do dark, lighter, then mid dark, then black. If you understand, you understand. I can't describe it very well. But anyway, I wanted a more classical looking Colourwork sock. Not a fan of the colours that I knit those out of. So I actually wanted to knit a pair that I do want, and also I kind of want to knit a pair to gift. I think it'd be a really nice gift instead of just a plain vanilla sock. Like, this is next level, proper meaty. That's disgusting. Like a proper project, time investment, you know, a really special gift to give. So that's that. I mean, these aren't expensive. I should say what they are. They're Drops Fable. I'm sure they're like £2.20 a ball. So they're not expensive. For me, they're not expensive. So, and I'll get a good couple of pairs, I think. Because it's Colourwork, you only use a little bit of each colour, apart from the main colour, obviously. So I should get a good couple of pairs out of this, I'm thinking. So it'll work out really well. Hopefully I'll knit a pair to gift to somebody that I'm thinking, I won't say who, but I'm thinking that they will really like it. That was a long spiel just on that. So that's one order that I made. Oh, actually, in that order, I got this Varpu pattern has really gotten into my head. It's just been the perfect pattern for me at the moment, in terms of being like mindless and giving me like instant gratification, like such a fast pattern. That has just been what I've needed at the moment. And I have wanted a boucle jumper for the longest time, but I've just not made one because I don't really know why I've not made one, because I didn't really want to. I don't really know what jumper pattern I could buy to then use a boucle yarn for, but I know that this pattern will work really well with a boucle yarn. So I got a couple of balls to make one out of this, and I did actually want to get a brushed alpaca to hold double with this, but they were out of stock. So I will wait until that's back in stock. I will just get the same dark grey colour so that there's no like marling. I will wait till that's back in stock to I honestly can't believe I'm thinking about making another one. But I am. Anyway, long story short, I got enough to make one of those. So the next thing that I got, so I made this order because I enjoyed knitting that hat so much that I just needed another one on my needles, because it was just filling me with joy that I just needed to make another one. So I got that those grey and black yarn to make the one that I've just cast on this morning, and I also got another drop sleemer in, it's actually a lot more muted and grayer in person. I'm not really sure what this one's called, but it's colour 6235. I've got two of those, and I also got two of these. Oh, that is not the colour in real life. That is really not the colour in real life. This is like a true cobalt blue. It's lighter than what it's showing in camera. That is not the colour at all. So holding it together with that, I'm hoping that will be really, really beautiful. Again, not sure who this is for. I have a feeling that Corrina would prefer a blue one over like a dark green one, so she can choose which one she wants, and I'll give the other one as a gift. Now, I actually am considering not even showing you this because I'm kind of extremely embarrassed about this, but I'll start off with a story slash thing that I have, and that is that I don't really like wearing jumpers out the house that I wear around the house a lot. I would prefer to have separate things, or like I will have a couple of jumpers I'll wear outside until I then wash them again, and then they'll become inside jumpers, that kind of a thing. However, I really, really love the first Varpu that I made that's like a light beigey colour. Really, really like that. It's beautiful. I love the look that it I just like the style and how it goes with everything. And I really want to wear that out the house, but it just makes me feel so good that wearing it that I don't want to give up wearing it every day to then wear it out the house a couple of times. So I bought yarn to make an outside Varpu basically. Don't judge me, please. I need it for my mental health, basically. I wish that was a joke, but it's not. So this is the off-white colour, and I just bought off-white, the colour, so that it's not mild, it is just white, which I think is gonna look beautiful with the kind of fabric that it creates, the shape of the garment. I think it's just gonna look stunning, and it's something that it's like a piece of, like an item that is just a straight up staple that I could wear with anything, that would go with anything, that makes me feel good wearing it. It's soft. It's basically everything that I want in a jumper, and because this is on sale at the moment, so it's £1.80 a ball, and I need 7 to make one, which at the moment turns out to be like £13 for a jumper. I'm not what's the word, like advocating for fast fashion, which this is basically fast fashion, let's be real, but how could you, like, I know that I could knit the same vibe of jumper with like a really expensive mohair held together with like a really nice merino strand of yarn, with smaller needles, therefore you need more yarn. I could easily spend like £80 on knitting the same vibe of jumper, but that's just not in my price range. I wish it was. If anybody wants to buy that for me, I would happily accept that. But it's not. So this is it, and I've spoken about this before, but I absolutely love this yarn. It doesn't feel cheap. I'm not advocating for cheap yarn at all, and it does get to me that I can't afford better yarn. I won't go into it, but anyway, I did it. It's happened. It's a thought in my mind. It's something that I want. I would cherish it, and I won't just wear it like once, like a lot of people do with fast fashion. It will be worn until it can be worn no more, and it can be mended no more. I know that for a fact. So that's that. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes, I'm looking at everything around me, and I've spoken about everything, and I can see on my phone that I have talked for like almost an hour and 10 minutes. So well done if you've made it this far. That's quite something. I feel like I've rambled a lot and talked about the same thing quite a lot. So hopefully you found it interesting, and I've spoken about things that I've not spoken about too much before. Yeah, a lot of Varpus, hats and socks, basically, that's it. Oh, and my clutch bag, but that's me. So future plans now is to finish that hat. Yeah, finish that hat. Maybe if I'm feeling up for it, if I don't actually think I will. Maybe finish that clutch. I've done a lot of work on it, and there's not actually too much work left to do on it. No, actually that's a lie, there is, because then you have to put the zip in and make the lining. Yeah, I'll keep that for a rainy day probably. So I will finish that hat, probably cast on that blue hat. I will hopefully cast on that Colourwork sock, and maybe cast on another Varpu. Yeah, that's me. That'll be me, and that'll keep me busy for a while, and hopefully I will come back in 2 weeks or so and tell you all about it, and probably tell you all about the whips or the cast-ons and FOs that I've cast on and finished that I've not even spoke about doing right now, which always seems to be the case. So yeah, thank you for watching again. Well done if you got this far. and I hope you're doing well. I hope you've had a better time than I have, and if you've been feeling the same as me, I hope it really starts to get better for you. I hope you have a better day, a better week, a better month. Yeah, I really hope things start looking up for you, or keep looking up for you if you